It is day number 34 of the ongoing continuous government shutdown, on the brink of being the longest in U.S. history. But some movement in terms of SNAP benefits, as the Trump administration said on Monday that it will partially fund those SNAP benefits for so many millions of Americans after rulings by judges in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. You can see from the Associated Press saying the Trump administration says SNAP will be partially funded by the judge's ruling required the food aid program to continue, as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which oversees this supplemental nutrition assistance program, had planned to freeze payments starting November 1 because it said it could no longer keep funding it during the shutdown. The program serves 1 in 8 Americans, a major piece of the nation's social safety net. Let's be joined right now, Jeff Mulvihill from the Associated Press, covering this very closely. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. What does this mean exactly, and how soon could people be seeing that money on their EBT cards?
I think everybody's figuring out exactly what it means, Andy. The ruling just came down today. The plan is for the federal government to provide some guidance for states later today on how to calculate the benefits, which will be around half of what they normally are. In the court filing, the Fed said that it could take weeks or even months to load up the cards because of the system changes and the calculations that states would have to make. We're still trying to figure that out, and see what states say. California told us it'd probably take them about a week from the time the money is available. Certainly, it means that people who rely on the program will have to look for ways to stretch their food money farther. We've already seen surges of demand at food banks. We're seeing states increase their contribution to food banks. A few states have tried to find ways to load up SNAP cards on their own.
Yeah, that is a very good point, and it is partially funded. Is that in part, at least potentially, because the shutdown could continue beyond even November?
No, the partial funding is because both judges said that the federal government had to use one specific pot of money to fund the programs. The folks who sued, most Democratic states and some cities and nonprofits, said, look, there are some other pots of money that could also be used for this purpose. But the federal government said that it needs to make sure it has access to that money in case it needs it down the line.
And you mentioned that some states are trying to figure it out themselves, funding it in different ways, asking for donations of the kind. And of course, they said they didn't expect the federal government to reimburse them for trying to piecemeal some of these things together to feed people in their states. That is still accurate, correct? States won't be reimbursed for whatever they did to try to fund these SNAP benefits moving forward.
That seems to be the case. I mean, I guess that it's, lots of things could be negotiated, but certainly the federal government has been steadfast about that so far.
And what else can you tell us? Because obviously legal challenges by some 25 states. What other challenges might be out there? Are we expecting any rulings?
Sure. So, these are the only two major legal challenges that we're aware of so far. One filed by most Democratic-led states, the other by cities and nonprofit groups. The judges have spoken for now. It does seem like if the shutdown isn't resolved by the end of November, we could be back in exactly the same spot a month from now, but the funds that are being used would no longer be there.
Yeah, no, that is a very good point in terms of this, because there's so many different facets. This one we've latched on to because November 1 was the date for that. If it does continue on, will they have to find other places for this emergency funding?
They would, and there's kind of double speculation here if it continues on and what would happen then. But the federal government has said that there's not other funding that's available. So I imagine that if we get there, we'd probably see that argument made again.
Anything else, Jeff, that you're looking at in terms of this? Because obviously still some concern and confusion over when exactly it goes into motion and people will be able to afford certain things. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that those, for the people who are the beneficiaries of the program, the timeline is really of essence. The federal government says that it'll make money available today, but that's only part of the process, right? That, that they still have to get the calculations to states, which happens today. States have to do some work. Some of it seems to be pretty technical. So, how that shakes out for people who rely on the program is the big thing we're watching.
Yeah, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said it could be on Wednesday. And if it's kind of trying to find your next meal, that could be is obviously kind of concerning for you. All right, Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, your reporting. You're on Live Now.
Thanks so much, Andy.
All right, thanks so much. All right, great conversation as always, as those two judges in Massachusetts and Rhode Island saying that the Trump administration must at least partially fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, but still some question marks about the exact timeline of when and if that goes into effect. A live look right now, day number 34 of this ongoing government shutdown. I'm Andy Mack. We're back after this.